One would say it is a quiet area, occupied mostly by farmers, with its inhabitants travelling to nearby towns to seek employment. This may be very true, however history tells a different story. Woodlawn or Motha, as it was known many years ago, was once a place of much employment and became quite built up by the Trinch family. The male line of the Woodlawn family held the title of Lord Ashtown. This family originated from France. The first owner of Woodlawn House was Frederick Trinch, first Lord Ashtown. The Trinch family built quite a few buildings around Woodlawn. Of those, Woodlawn House was by far the largest and most picturesque. The other buildings included a rectory, a Gothic-style church, a mausoleum and a railway station. His successor was his nephew, as he had no sons from his marriage, Frederick Mason Trinch. The third Lord Ashtown became bankrupt in the 1900s, which resulted in an auction of the contents of this mansion, then over 100 years old after being beautified throughout its lifespan. Built as a Neo-Palladian house, Palladian architecture is a European style of architecture, derived from the designs of an Italian architect, Andrea Palladio. Neo-Palladian refers to a new, modified form of Palladianism. It has a balanced front with wings either side and Palladian or Venetian windows. It has finials at the corners at roof level. The main part of Woodlawn House was built in 1800. The right wing was built in 1855 and in 1870 the left wing was completed. The house is 4 stories high and is built of grey cut limestone. It contains over 50 rooms, 6 large reception rooms with decorative ceilings, chandeliers and mantelpieces, 17 principal and 9 staff and secondary bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 5 toilets, kitchens, pantries, dairy and cellarage. It contains 3 stone stairways. All rooms were furnished with antiqued furniture and wall-to-wall carpets. A furnace was supplied the house with central heating. A well inside the house, worked by a hand pump, supplied the drinking water, while for domestic use, water was supplied by the lake. A 16-foot wall surrounded a 4-acre garden and a gardener's house. The fields around the house were well stocked with pheasants. Below the house were a chain of small lakes flowing into a trout river. Aspect planting was a feature of the landed estate. Trees which were planted on a height, thus producing aspect, a certain look and appearance. Beech, chestnut and lime trees were planted on the grounds, creating pleasure grounds, an area where the gentry could take leisurely walks on the estate. The Trinch family lived upstairs in their own quarters. Staff were contactable by means of a bell. Servant call bells hanging above the sink were set in motion by a bell pull in each upstairs room. Each bell was linked to different rooms in the house so that the servants could identify which member of the household was calling them. There was a very large kitchen downstairs with a huge open fireplace and baking oven. A central service lift or dumbwaiter linked the downstairs kitchen with the upstairs dining room. This service lift was operated by means of pulley ropes and were counterbalanced by a weight. The gardener had his own 5-bedroom house and 4 acres of garden surrounded by a 16-foot high wall. He had a staff of 12 to help maintain the massive grounds. There was a blacksmith employed full-time on the estate, and he carried out all the work with wrought iron. These gates are an example of some of the fine work carried out by the blacksmith. The iron railings found throughout the estate were used to make horseshoes. There was a rabbit catcher employed on the estate also.
The Ashtown Mausoleum was built as a private burial vault for the Trinch family. It is a very fine memorial to the Ashtown family, built in a semi-castellated style. This is where the Ashtown family, in its entirety, was to be laid to rest. However, not all his children adhered to his wishes. This is a magnificent monument. The inner circular tower housed Lord Ashtown's tomb. The gate was built in early famine times. This structure is known as an eye-catcher. This architectural feature was a representation of the status and grandeur associated with the gentry of the estate. Here we see the entrance to the estate, which one boasted fine pillars and decorative wrought iron railings. These pillars were once surmounted by 2 statues of lions. Once again, such features indicated the grandeur of the enclosed grounds. Lord Ashtown had the foresight to see the value of having a railway at hand, because it would open markets to East Galway. Lord Ashtown offered the land necessary for the line free of charge to the railway company. The railway company jumped at the offer of free land because it would have proved to be very expensive. The original route from Dublin to Galway was planned to go through Athlone, Colour, with a branch line to Athenry. However, Lord Cloncarty was a very influential man. This is the Protestant church, where the Ashtown family practiced its religion. It is located about 600 yards north of the main entrance to the big house. To travel to church in a horse-drawn carriage. There are a number of tombstones on the ground of the church.
Woodlawn House had its own ice house, which was located away from the main building. This ice house resembled a huge egg buried in the earth with the widest part facing upwards. The building of these ice houses was difficult as most of the work was underground. The whole was linked with brick, packed with straw for insulation and the ice loaded in from the top. Below was a pipe for drainage which contained a trap to keep out rats and mice. The ice was brought from the lake, broken into small pieces, then packed inside. For insulation, the ice house was covered with sods and soil, and this also helped to blend it into the landscape. This is the weighing house, which contained a weighing machine. Lord Ashtown bought goods from the keeper workers, produce from their own farms. The goods had to be weighed in. Lord Ashtown was an exceptionally good landlord to his tenants. He built them houses which surpassed them of most other houses built by other landlords for their tenants. This is a typical tenant house. All tenant houses on the estate were slate roofed. However, one of the last houses to be built was roofed with thatch. Money was apparently scarce at this time. Fireplace cranes would have been found in these tenant houses on the estate. A crane was an iron bracket hinged to one side of the fireplace from which the cook hung her pots over the fire. The crane was swung out from the fireplace so that it was pointing into the room. The pots were hung directly from the crane or by hanging them from a hook known as a pot hook. The crane was then swung toward the fire. Cooking temperature was regulated by swinging the crane so that the cooking vessel was closer to, directly over, or farther away from the fire. Temperature was also regulated by controlling the heat of the fire itself. A log fire produced a huge amount of heat.
This was a common type kettle made of cast iron with a flat bottom. Kettles were also made of other materials such as copper, bell metal, brass and block tin. Some kettles had short legs and a bill. Pots were hung from the crane. They had small feet so they could stand independently on the hearth as well.
Some irons used were hollow with a little door at the back. A piece of iron was taken out which had cooled and was replaced with a hot piece to heat the iron again. Other irons used at the time were all one piece like this one. The iron was pushed into the fire and the cloth was used to hold it. Some of these had a base which was clipped on. This saved in cleaning the iron every time it was taken out of the fire.
Cakes were mixed on breadboards. A three-legged flat bottom called an oven was used for baking or roasting. Hot coals were put on the lid. Cakes were also baked on a flat piece of iron called a griddle.
This churn was used to make butter. The handle was turned around. This splashed the milk and cream around inside the churn until the cream became butter. The butter was taken out and salted to keep it fresh. The milk was left after churning was called buttermilk and was used for drinking and for baking. Paraffin lights like these were used for light. Some lights could be hung on the wall. The others could be carried from room to room. Candles were also much used.
We have really enjoyed completing this project. Woodlawn House was a very beautiful house in its day, and we thoroughly enjoyed researching its history. If Woodlawn House were to be refurbished, it would make a beautiful hotel. It is situated in a very peaceful area. The view from the house is very beautiful on a summer's day. One could go for country walks. There is also a lake nearby where there is usually a lot of swans. One could always go horse riding, so all in all it could be a very enjoyable place to go on holidays or holidays.